know that most of what you've seen, read, or heard about Billy the Kid is untrue? My name is Gail Cooper. I'm a medical doctor and forensic psychiatrist. My specialty is murder case consultation for the defense. For 20 years, I've used my expertise to uncover the real Billy the Kid. Researching over 40,000 pages of archival documents and books, I've written the revisionist history. It's shocking, it's liberating, and I've written books demolishing the hoaxes, hijacking the history. My talks will share with you what I've found. Cover-ups, misinformation, and fakery, to use Old West lingo, will bite the dust. This talk presents my revisionist history of Billy Bonney's great escape from Lincoln's Courthouse Jail. The information is from my book, The Lost Pardon of Billy the Kid, an analysis factoring in the Santa Fe Ring, Governor Lew Wallace's dilemma, and a territory in rebellion. Billy Bonney's great escape from Lincoln's Courthouse Jail 15 days before scheduled hanging is famous, surpassed only by his killing by Pat Garrett 78 days later. How Billy managed it is a mystery examined here. It's clear that Billy hadn't regarded his sentence as inescapable. On March 4th, 1881, from the Santa Fe jail, he'd written to Governor Lew Wallace an unanswered letter anticipating the outcome of his Messiah trials. He stated, "I guess they mean to send me up without giving me any show, but they will have a nice time doing it. I am not entirely without friends." Wallace's betrayal of their pardon bargain had left Billy facing hanging. Worse, Wallace wanted that, to silence Billy's accusations. In that same letter, Billy had written, "I have done everything that I promised you I would, and you have done nothing that you promised me." On April 28, 1881, Wallace gave the owner of the Las Vegas Gazette, J.H. Kugler, his interview with Governor Lew Wallace on the Kid. Wallace chose Santa Fe Ring-biased Kugler sadistically. On December 12, 1880, Billy had written to Wallace exposing Kugler's lies, stating, "I noticed in the Las Vegas Gazette a piece which stated that Billy the Kid, the name by which I'm known in the country, was the captain of a band of outlaws who hold forth at the Portales. There is no such organization in existence, so the gentleman must have drawn very heavily on his imagination." Kugler now reported, "The conversation drifted into the sentence of the Kid. It looks as though he would hang Governor. Yes, the chances seem good that the 13th of May would finish him. He appears to look to you to save his neck. Yes," said Governor Wallace, smiling, "but I can't see how a fellow like him should expect any clemency from me." Although not committing himself, the general tenor of the governor's remarks indicated that he would resolutely refuse to grant the Kid a pardon. It would seem as though the Kid had undertaken to bulldoze the governor, which has not helped his chances in the slightest. That same April 28th, Billy escaped, but Wallace was unaware. Up to that moment, Wallace had been covertly sadistic to Billy. Now, with his pardon denial public, Wallace's sadism became overt. He wanted to kill. On April 30th, as governor, he wrote Billy's death warrant for Sheriff Pat Garrett. Wallace kept this murderous feeling for life, but projected it onto his fictional Billy the Kid as wanting to kill him. Wallace wrote to the Sheriff of Lincoln County, New Mexico, greeting at the March term AD 1881 of the District Court for the 3rd Judicial District of New Mexico, held at La Mesilla in the county of Doña Ana. William Bonney, alias Kid, alias William Antrim, was duly convicted of the crime of murder in the 1st degree. And on the 15th day of said term, the same being the 13th day of April AD 1881, the said William Bonney, alias Kid, alias William Antrim, was adjudged and sentenced to be hanged by the neck until dead by the sheriff of the said county of Lincoln within the said county. Therefore you, the sheriff of the said county of Lincoln, are hereby commanded that on Friday, the 13th day of May, AD 1881, you take the said William Bonney from the county jail of the county of Lincoln, where he is now confined, to some safe and convenient place within the said county, and there, between the hours of 10 o'clock a.m. and 3 o'clock p.m., you hang the said William Bonney by the neck until he is dead, and make due return of your acts hereunder. On April 21st, Billy arrived in Lincoln to Pat Garrett's custody and to the new Lincoln Courthouse with its second-floor makeshift jail. Symbolizing Santa Fe Ring triumph, it was the converted 2-story house, the Ring's past local mercantile stronghold. It had been taken over from bankrupt James Dolan and John Riley by their backer, Ring boss Thomas Benton Catron. Catron had then sold it to the county. Billy's 2 guards, deputized by Garrett, were Robert Bob Ollinger and James W. Bell. Ollinger had been a Ringite Seven Rivers rustler, taking part in all Lincoln County war murders. Bell had been a White Oaks posseman and possible friendly fire killer of Jim Carlisle at that posse's November 28, 1880, Great House Ranch ambush of Billy and his companions. Billy's hanging was 22 days away. He had no money to appeal. He was arm and leg shackled, chained to a metal fastener in the floor, and under 24-hour guard. On April 28th, his 8th day there, he escaped. This is what's known. Billy was not in a real jail cell, just a big second-story room with windows at the north and east. In lieu of a chamber pot, he was taken to the outhouse behind the building. Billy's room opened at the west to Pat Garrett's office. There, or in the jail room, Deputy Bob Ollinger kept his Whitney double-barrel shotgun. Garrett's office opened to a north-to-south hallway. At its north end were doors to a balcony, which lacked stairs and looked down on Lincoln's street. At the hall's northwest side was a room housing other prisoners. It led westward to a room which had been used for Masonic services. At the hall's southwest end was an armory room. On April 27th, Garrett departed to White Oaks to collect taxes. On April 28th, on Deputy James Bell's noon shift, Billy revealed that he had a revolver and was free of his wrist shackles. He offered to tie Bell, but Bell bolted down the stairway. Halfway down, he was shot through the chest by Billy. Bell staggered to the back door, was encountered by the building's caretaker, Gottfried Gauss, died in his arms, and was dragged to the backyard. Somehow alerted, Deputy Bob Ollinger ran from the Wortley Hotel across the street where he'd taken the other prisoners for lunch. He went to the courthouse's east side. There, from the second-floor jail room's east window, Billy killed him with his own Whitney double-barrel shotgun. Then Billy smashed it and hurled the pieces onto Ollinger's corpse. Billy then demanded a miner's pick and a horse from Gauss and addressed gathered townspeople from the balcony. No one tried to stop him, though breaking the leg chain with the miner's pick took a long time. Billy then rode away on County Clerk Billy Burt's pony. Theories have claimed that Billy seized Bell's revolver or stole one from the armory. I favor the theory that Gottfried Gauss assisted him. Obviously, Gauss would have kept that secret. This is my reconstruction. Gauss was no random caretaker. He'd been employed in the early 1870s to set up a brewery for the house's ringite partners, but they cheated him out of his wages. He then became John Tunstall's cook. He would have met new ranch hand Billy Bonney in October of 1877. Gauss was present at Tunstall's Fearless River Ranch during Tunstall's harassment by ringite Sheriff William Brady's possemen for the property attachment in Alexander McSween's fake embezzlement case by the Ring. On February 18, 1878, Gauss was left at that ranch when Tunstall took his men, including Billy, to herd his horses, which were immune to attachment, back to Lincoln. So Gauss saw Brady's rabid possemen arrive looking for Tunstall. Then he saw them return after murdering him. In the Lincoln County War that followed, Gauss would have personally known the regulators, including Billy, as Tunstall's past ranch hands. He may have witnessed these regulators' killings in Lincoln of Brady and his deputy George Hinman to prevent their murdering Alexander McSween. He would have known about the regulators' killing of Tunstall murder posseman Andrew Buckshot Roberts in self-defense. He would have known about the final battle of the war's murders of Alexander McSween and his followers and arson of his home. To Gauss, Billy would have been the Lincoln County War's hero. The next year, Gauss would have known about attorney Houston Chapman's ring murder on Lincoln Street. He would have been acquainted with Billy's loyal attorney, Ira Leonard, who'd moved to Lincoln. Through Leonard, Gauss might have heard about Governor Lew Wallace's betrayal of Billy's pardon bargain with him. So Gauss would have hated everything and everyone connected to Billy's intended hanging. It required that kind of passion to risk his life as an accessory to jailbreak and possible murder by providing its weapon. And Pat Garrett, James Bell, and Bob Ollinger, not from Lincoln, would have been unaware of Gauss's background and security risk. Garrett, Bell, and Ollinger would have also been unaware of Lincoln townspeople's hatred of the Santa Fe Ring. Most had fled town at the Lincoln County War's final battle from July 14th to 19th of 1878. Then they pressured new Governor Lew Wallace to remove Fort Stan's commander, N.A.M. Dudley, whose illegal invasion of their town to back the Ring had enabled murder, arson, and defeat of the freedom fight. In the April 1879 grand jury, they had indicted 200, primarily Ringites, for that war's crimes. By May 1st, days later, in that same grand jury, Boss Catron and other Ringite lawyers representing those indicted Ringites colluded with the Ringite judge to get them all pardoned by misuse of Lew Wallace's amnesty proclamation, which barred pardon to those indicted. That was the grand jury in which Billy's testimony got the Ringite murderers of Houston Chapman indicted. Lincolnites subsequently saw Chapman's indicted murderer and local ring boss James Dolan shielded from prosecution by the ring. Then Lincolnites saw treasonous Ringite commander Dudley exonerated by a rigged military court of inquiry. So Lincolnites knew it was impossible to get justice, and they knew that Billy, their hero, now unjustly faced hanging. The obvious weak link in Billy's captivity was the outhouse. It's part of the Gottfried Gauss as accomplice theory. As the building's caretaker, Gauss would have had access to Billy, albeit in the presence of his guards. Cryptic communication about the outhouse would have been possible, and Gauss could have gotten the revolver from the armory. He could have hidden it with the wrist shackle key in the outhouse. Presumably, the leg shackle key could not be found. And Gauss would know that the best time for an escape would be after Garrett left town. Gottfried Gauss managed to stay free of suspicion, and Billy was killed by Garrett anyway 78 days later in Fort Sumner. Gauss's version of the escape is known. On March 1st, 1890, he was interviewed by the Lincoln County Leader. Reading between the lines, one can speculate that he directed Deputy Ollinger to the courthouse jail's east side, where Billy ambushed him, since there was no other reason for Ollinger to go there. He also implied the enabling role of Lincolnites, who even shook hands with escaping Billy. Gauss was quoted, "I was crossing the yard behind the courthouse when I heard a shot fired, then a tussle upstairs in the courthouse, somebody hurrying downstairs, and Deputy Sheriff Bell emerging from the door running toward me. He ran right into my arms, expired the same moment, and I laid him down dead. That I was in a hurry to secure assistance or perhaps to save myself, everybody will believe. When I arrived at the garden gate leading to the street in front of the courthouse, I saw the other deputy, Sheriff Ollinger, coming out of the hotel opposite with the 4 or 5 other county prisoners where they had taken their dinner. I called to him to come quick. He did so, leaving his prisoners in front of the hotel. When he had come up close to me, and while I was standing not a yard apart, I told him that I was just after laying Bell dead on the ground in the courtyard behind. Before he could reply, he was struck by a well-directed shot fired from a window above us and fell dead at my feet. I ran for my life to reach my room in safety when Billy the Kid called to me. 'Don't run. I wouldn't hurt you. I am alone and master not only of the courthouse but also of the town, for I will allow nobody to come near us. You go,' he said, 'and saddle one of Judge Ira Leonard's horses, and I will clear out as soon as I have the shackles loosened from my legs.' With a little prospecting pick I had thrown to him through the window, he was working for at least an hour and could not accomplish more than to free one leg. He came to the conclusion to wait a better chance, tie one shackle to his waist belt, and start out. Meanwhile, I had saddled a small skittish pony belonging to Billy Burt, the county clerk, as there was no other horse available. When Billy went down the stairs at last, on passing the body of Bell, he said, 'I'm sorry I had to kill him, but I couldn't help it.' On passing the body of Ollinger, he gave him a tip with his boot, saying, 'You're not going to round me up again.' And so Billy the Kid started out that evening after he had shaken hands with everybody around and having a little difficulty in mounting on account of the shackles on his leg. He went on his way rejoicing. On April 30th, returned Pat Garrett got the humiliating news and had to report his failed assignment to kill Billy the Kid. He wrote on the back of Billy's court documents, "I certify that I received the within named William Bonney, misspelled as Bonny, into my custody on the 21st of April 1881, and I further certify that on April 28th he made his escape by killing his guards, James Bell and Robert Ollinger. Boarding prisoner and 2 guards 8 days, $40. Guarding and transporting from Fort Stanton, $69. Returning writ, 50 cents. Total, $109. Garrett forgot to add the 50 cents. That's almost $13 today. 4 days later, on May 3rd, Lew Wallace, now aware of the escape, placed his second reward notice, this time in the Santa Fe Daily New Mexican. It stated, "Billy the Kid, $500 reward. I will pay $500 reward to any person or persons who will capture William Bonney, alias the Kid, and deliver him to any sheriff of New Mexico. Satisfactory proofs of identity will be required." At the escape, Billy was just 21, bicultural and fluent in Spanish. He could have ridden 150 miles south for a new life in Mexico, but he refused to leave his territory home and his sweetheart, young Paulita Maxwell. So he rode 150 miles northeast to Fort Sumner, known to its 200 residents since 1878. He should have realized that, though most were his friends, hiding there from Pat Garrett would be impossible. He had 78 days to live. Billy's friend, John Meadows, was at his Penasco River Ranch when Billy arrived. That showed that Billy, after briefly staying with his friend Eugenio Salazar in Las Tablas on the north side of the Capitan Mountains, first sensibly headed south towards Mexico. Meadows, in his posthumous 2004 book, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid as I Knew Them, is quoted, "Old man Salazar," meaning Eugenio Salazar, "let the kid have a little sorrel horse. One night after dark he showed up at Tom Norris and my ranch, and seeing there was nobody there but us two whom he could trust, he stepped to the door and said, 'Well, I've got you, haven't I?' I said, 'Well, you have, so what are you going to do with us?' He said, 'I'm going to eat supper with you.'" Unbeknownst to himself, Lew Wallace was no longer in control of Billy's reputation. On May 4th, the day after Wallace's reward notice, the Santa Fe Daily New Mexican reported Billy's jailbreak, stating, "The above account of the escape is the record of as bold a deed as those versed in the annals of crime can recall. It surpasses anything of which the kid had been guilty, so far that his past offenses lose much of their heinousness in comparison with it, and effectually settles the question of whether the kid is a cowardly cutthroat or a thoroughly reckless and fearless man." Wallace likely read that article. On May 16th, it seems to have precipitated his retaliatory first full-blown Billy the Kid outlaw myth. He used the St. Louis Daily Globe Democrat for his article titled, "The Thugs' Territory, Stage Robbers and Cutthroats Have Things Their Own Way in New Mexico. General Lew Wallace, Anxious to Punish Crime That Is So Prevalent." A chapter about Billy the Kid. In it, Wallace lied that he withheld the pardon because Billy refused to reform. But with Billy now loose to expose him, Wallace's panic yielded his paranoid fantasy of Billy's wanting to kill him, as well as hysterical defamations. Wallace wrote, "He stole, murdered, and ravished women. It is claimed he has killed some 40 men." On May 28, 1881, not waiting to complete his hated governorship, Wallace departed New Mexico Territory. Billy had 47 days left to live because of his treachery. The real Billy Bonney, with his great escape, surpassed his outlaw myth by Ringite Press and Lew Wallace. And it occurred against the backdrop of non-interference by Lincoln's townspeople, who finally won the Lincoln County War their own way. A later talk will analyze Pat Garrett's Fort Sumner killing of Billy Bonney.